Hello everyone, I'm Andy Oakley, the leader of the One New Zealand Party, and today I'm going to talk about New Zealand's economic disaster. Most baby boomers, or those of us born between 1946 and 1964, will remember the 1950s, 60s and 70s as being a particularly prosperous time. A single take-home wage could support a family of 5 or 6 people. Home ownership rates were 70% and unemployment was 1% for quite some time. It was a very stable time for New Zealand, and it was a very safe place too, a place where families flourished. However, since the mid-70s, both of the major parties have led us away from that safety and stability in many ways. One of the ways that they've done this is their complete misunderstanding of the economy and how to run a monetary system. The result of which is the depletion of our prosperity to the point that today the average take-home wage is $780 per week, but the average rent is $500 a week, and the median house price in New Zealand is $630,000. Which means that the average wage earner would have to save every cent of their money over and above the rent for 225 weeks just to pay the 10% deposit on the median house, which is impossible. Even if it were possible, the repayments would be about $659 a week, which is even more impossible than paying the average rent. This simple equation shows us clearly that neither Labour or National or any of their coalition partners or their economic advisors know what they're doing when it comes to operating a monetary supply or an economy for the people. So what happened, and how can we, the One New Zealand Party, fix it? Well, the major blunder by successive governments is that they've bought into the false economic belief that governments must behave like households, i.e. a currency user who has limited funds. As we're all aware, people and businesses who use currency first earn it and then spend it responsibly, saving for the big ticket items or borrowing to make them happen sooner. Too much borrowing and things slowly get out of control until fiscal austerity measures are required or even bankruptcy because there are limited funds. The government and their advisors have this false belief about how to behave because it seems plausible. They understand it and they can relate it to the voters. Well, this is all very well, except they can't explain why the public keep getting poorer and that they, the government, do not have enough money to provide for healthcare, education or infrastructure, the very thing that they were voted in to do. The end result of successive governments running this limited money supply system is that people needlessly die or suffer, hundreds of thousands of them over time, on underfunded roads as a result of underfunded healthcare system, lawlessness and despair because of the welfare dependency and dysfunctional single-parent families. I mean, the only way to describe this is a complete collapse of our society and our economy, which is the economic reality for the average family on the average wage living in a country that has the world's highest suicide rate. Our whole society, including the media, workplaces, the general public, local and central government, lobby groups, sports groups, all get caught up in an endless debate about the allocation of limited funds and the amount the government have to borrow to even keep us where we are. Think about what all the pressing things are in New Zealand. They're all related to underfunding, low wages, low productivity, high public and private debt, low confidence and low self-esteem. And when you put the toxic story of our nation's history that recent governments are promulgating to our youth through the education system, it's no wonder we have the highest youth suicide rate in the world. But come every election cycle, we continue to vote for Labour and National, the very people who put us in this position. And the despairing thing is that apart from the One New Zealand Party, there are no other parties that seem to know anything about the economy either, which is the most important factor for our prosperity. So how do we end these endless debates about where we allocate limited funds? Well, actually, it's quite simple. In New Zealand, we operate a fiat currency, which means the government is authorised to issue the sovereign New Zealand dollar into the economy. Or to put it another way, the New Zealand government are not a currency user. They don't earn money, they are a currency issuer. We just need to make a small amendment to the Public Finance Act, which is the legislation that forces the government to behave like a household, borrowing to try and stay solvent, instead of likening the government to a household which requires reserves to spend. We recognise that every sovereign dollar the government issue is a new dollar, and that taxes are only required to bind the state and the people, and to control excesses or bad behaviours, such as smoking, for instance. This fiscal change means finally we can unleash the power of our New Zealand dollar and issue our currency as capacity allows. It is impossible for the New Zealand government to become insolvent, and neither do they need to borrow to buy anything in the New Zealand sovereign dollar. There will be no more limited money supply, and gone with it will be our incessant debating of where the limited money supply should be allocated. All economic decisions about spending will be about capacity. This allows us to plan the economy better. For instance, if we see that massive infrastructure renewal is required, well, we can produce young adults fit to carry out the work, as we used to. And if we see that there is a breakdown in the functionality of families, we can offer education in that area and make it economically attractive to bring up a family where mum and dad are together. Pensioners will no longer be worried about their pensions. The government will always have the resources to pay pensions. And the government can also buy up all the unemployment, funding government guaranteed jobs, so that we have no one not working and on welfare. Construction companies will no longer go broke, as the government can now set the price for major construction projects, offering the tenders to New Zealand companies that pay their workers well and carry out world-leading health and safety behaviour. The only limit to government spending will be the capacity. For instance, there's no point in issuing $500 million for a new hospital in Whangarei if there's no one there to build it. They could, however, decide to tender it to an overseas company. You see, running a capacity-based monetary system allows for so much more choice and control over the economy. An economy that has New Zealanders at the centre of it, and not an inane goal of balancing imaginary books like Labour and National keep dredging up election cycle after election cycle. Now you have a choice. Vote for a party, the only party that understands the economy. The One New Zealand Party.